Laptop since it came out in early 2023. This is the Razer Blade 16. This is the maxed out specs. So 4090 Intel 13 something something HX, and then it has the dual resolution display, so 4K/1080p, 120 FPS at 4K, and then something else at 1080p. I want to give you my experiences with it over my ownership period and give you the reasons why I think you might want to reconsider buying it. First reason. So this plagues all of Razer's products essentially, laptops, peripherals, who knows what they make except maybe their slippers, is that you must run the Synapse 3 or whatever version they're on software. Now the problem for me specifically with this laptop and Synapse is that beyond just being like buggy and kind of a resource hog and slow, is that whenever I restart the laptop with an option inside Synapse that requires a restart, like changing the native resolution of the display, whenever it comes back, Synapse doesn't recognize the laptop or is intermittently recognizes it. So I'll open up Synapse and it can't find the laptop, which is incredible to me since it's like the whole computer is the laptop, so how can it not recognize it? And before you say, why don't you just not run Synapse? The problem is Synapse, you need Synapse to run the LED software. So, and you might have it low profile and then all of a sudden now it's green. There might be other software to control the LEDs, but it should just work since it's the one that comes with the Razer, is their software. Now, the other major problem is that inside Synapse is the bindings for the function keys. The function keys can either be function keys, so like F1 through 12, or they can be multimedia keys, like on a MacBook, you hit the function key and it changes the volume. You don't have to hold like a function button to do that. And I always have it set as the multimedia keys. But if Synapse doesn't start up or it starts up and it doesn't recognize the laptops, those keys won't work. It'll just default back to the function. A solution I've seen in other computers, and maybe not a whole lot of them, is just to have that setting in the BIOS so I don't even have to mess with Synapse. Maybe Synapse will be better in the future, but right now, not my favorite software to have on the laptop. Very buggy, very slow. One of the main reasons people get this laptop is because of the all aluminum unibody build. But there are drawbacks to that too. And the main drawback with this laptop, since it has such high end, and what I mean by high end, high heat output components, is that the palm rest area, places where you touch the laptop, get much hotter than the similar equivalent plastic body laptops. So for example, I did a temperature measurement, letting a game soak in the laptop for about 30 minutes to raise the temperature of the case to probably the maximum it's going to get. The temperature on the palm rest got to almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and similar on the touchpad. Now, the ambient temperature in the room at the time was only 70 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's a 30 degrees jump. And even when the laptop's just idle, it's about 80 to 85 degrees already. So it gets much hotter, and it becomes very uncomfortable to lay your hand on over time, especially if you're in an environment that's already hot. And of course, if you're in an environment that's already hot, the wrist rest will get even hotter than it is already. Now, on an equivalent laptop on the Asus Scar, which is a plastic body, the temperature only rises to about 85 to 90. So it's still not cool, but it's definitely cooler than the Razer's aluminum body. This is true for any aluminum laptop. So even the MacBook is like that. You just don't notice it as much because you don't usually play games or run something super intensive on the MacBook while it's undocked. That same thread, not all aluminum laptops are actually created equal. So one difference between the MacBook and this Razer Blade is that even though both are fully aluminum, the anodization finish on the Razer is very weak. So on the MacBook, where you plug in and plug out, the only thing you got is USB-C cables and HDMI, the finish of the anodization doesn't get worn down. But on this Razer, where where the plugs are, where the power plug is, where USB-C is, where regular USB is, just that the plug touching that outer edge of the socket over time will wear down the anodization, and you'll see it looks kind of like you scratched it up. It's not a huge functional deal, but most people buy this laptop largely in part because of the aesthetics of the laptop. So this is an aesthetic problem on a $3,000, $4,000 laptop. I mean, what if in your car, by plugging in something, you scratch the paint, or if you have a gas car, by filling the gas, you damage the paint. I mean, that's exactly what's happening here. If I plug in USB, if I plug in power or something, you're gonna do over and over and over again. Why do I damage the laptop? It just seems like poor design. I keep mentioning the MacBook, but there's good reason. I think Razer kind of benchmarked the MacBook for this laptop. So another thing it shares in common is the key travel distance. The key travel distance is very short. It's about 1 millimeter, and I measure it here. You can see that. I measure it with calipers, and I get about 1 millimeter pretty consistently. And I've done my MacBook in other cases, and it is exactly the same. Now, on a MacBook, it doesn't really matter because you're usually not playing games. In this case, it does matter because if you're doing WASD, the short throw and the flat keys on this laptop make it very easy for you to accidentally hit keys or activate keys you weren't expected to do. And that'll obviously make your gameplay experience worse. Now, to mitigate that, you can curl up your fingers more so they're at a more vertical so they don't touch the keys behind the WASD or whatever number keys that you're using. But the problem is now when your finger is curled, that's very unergonomic. It causes you, physical strain over time. It's very uncomfortable. Maybe cause you a cramp even. So it's a bad decision for a gaming laptop, a good decision aesthetically. But since this is not a very good compromise in my opinion, I think they could have made their own keyboard that's not a ripoff of the MacBook that would have worked better and still looked good. For example, on my other gaming laptop, the Asus Scar 16, the travel of the keys is actually about 1.8 to 2 millimeters. I think they list 2 millimeters, but I measure 1.8. These keys are kind of loose, so it's hard to make a super accurate measurement, but it's definitely much bigger throw than the ones on the Razer. And as a result, when I play games on the Asus, it's a much better experience using a keyboard. I don't have the misclicks and my fingers don't hurt because I'm kind of curling them to make up for the lack of key travel distance. The last reason I was debating, I was trying to keep the reasons you consider down to 5, so I needed to choose my most important 5. There's actually about 6 that came to mind. One of them is that the dual native display, it's not really dual native in my opinion. When you go down to 1080p, it definitely doesn't look as crisp as a true 1080p screen of the same size. That's one, hard to capture on camera, and it's still usable. And you actually have 1440p option of the screen, which I would personally, if I could go back in time, I would choose if it was mini LED. I'm not sure if they actually offer that in mini LED though. But more importantly, something you use every day on your laptop that you probably take for granted is the speakers. And the speakers on this, even though this is a thick 16-inch laptop, are very bad. They sound very tinny. Here, I'll show you a comparison between the Razer and, of course, the king of laptop speakers, the MacBook 16. So here's a sound test, MacBook 16 2021 versus the Razer. Both at 80% volume. This is the MacBook. Okay, and now the Razer. There you go. So I think the difference is pretty clear between the two laptops, which one sounds better. You obviously won't get the full experience not hearing it in person, but I can guarantee you it basically sounds like earbuds that you turned up the volume really loud on and glued to the laptop. That's what it sounds like. I wouldn't want to use them for movies, some games, and definitely not listening to music. I usually will have to have headphones or something to go with this laptop when I'm using it and need sound. That's just really sad too because they purchased THX, a renowned audio company, and it seems like they didn't utilize the learnings or the knowledge or the personnel from that company to incorporate into the laptop. It seems like it was mostly just their THX software, which actually doesn't help this laptop much at all, unfortunately. So those are my reasons I want you to consider before buying this laptop. As I said, I've owned this since it came out. Those are definitely significant cons in my opinion. And if it bothers you enough, this is something you probably definitely want to avoid, especially at the price tag of $3,000 to $4,000.